Well, I'm just leaving Capitol Hill, and brace yourselves because we are headed to a government shutdown. So what exactly happened? Well, tonight, Senate Republicans forced a vote on a bill to keep the government funded. Democrats blocked that. They say they will not agree to keep the government funded until Republicans agree to reverse cuts to Medicaid and also to extend expiring Obamacare subsidies so that healthcare premiums do not go up for millions of Americans. Republicans say they're willing to talk about all that, but not while the government is shut down. So here's the bottom line. There needs to be compromise in order to avert a government shutdown. There is not compromise at this point. So what does this all mean? Well, it means that 4 million federal workers could go without pay. That includes 2 million troops and also TSA workers, air traffic controllers. It's going to be another long day tomorrow. Democrats and Republicans have already left the Capitol, so I am heading home too. The government shuts down at midnight.
The U.S. government is shutting down, and here's what you need to know. At midnight Eastern time, the government is shutting down. In fact, the White House has already given the order to begin the shutdown procedure. Here's how it may impact you. Many federal employees are going to be furloughed, if not permanently terminated by this administration during the shutdown. In fact, almost half of the Pentagon staff, the Department of Defense, 335,000 employees are set to be furloughed at midnight. That's very concerning. In addition to that, the Department of Transportation also going to be impacted. That could affect TSA lines, air traffic controllers, which are already in a shortage. This could be longer wait times, delayed flights, etc. Now, if you receive Social Security benefits, disability payments, you're a disabled veteran, those checks will still go through. And even though the State Department is also facing massive cuts right now, they have already issued a statement saying that they will continue to process passport and visa applications. But in all honesty, I would expect there to be delays and longer wait times to get those approved. So that's what you need to know. The Senate is expected to vote again tomorrow, Wednesday, October 1st.
Donald Trump and his advisors today confirmed that since the shutdown's going to be happening, that they are going to be looking at permanently doing reductions in force of federal employees. If you don't believe me, let's watch 3 different clips.
How many federal workers do you plan to lay off?
Well, we may do a lot, and that's only because of the Democrats. And
of the legal truth that if money is not appropriated for a position, then they then have the authority to eliminate the position. Of course, it's very intuitive, and that's an enormous amount of leverage over the Democrats.
now, with that being said, we can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible, that are bad for them and irreversible by them.
All of these clips were specifically about the government shutdown. All of these clips were specifically about federal employees and the White House terminating federal employees through reductions in force. Over the next 5 days, it's expected that 400 to 500,000 federal employees will receive RIF notices, reduction in force memos, which then starts a 60-day countdown. At the end of the 60 days, they're fired from federal service. They'll get a severance and they'll be shoved out the door. Some of them with decades of experience. All because Russell Voigt, the Office of Management and Budget Director and one of the writers of Project 2025, hates federal employees. He's in fact on record saying he wants to traumatize federal employees, make them sick when they think about going to work, and he wants them to leave federal service. Why? Because he doesn't believe that the government should provide basic services to American citizens and that the New Deal by FDR corrupted the American way of life. He wants to revert America back to the late 1800s, early 1920s. So for hundreds of thousands of federal employees and their families, totaling over 1 million people, this shutdown isn't just about a lack of appropriations. It potentially is the difference between them having a job or not. And if you might want to say, oh, layoffs happen all the time, not illegally. And they don't happen like this, because everything the White House is attempting to do right now is illegal, but they continue to get away with it because Trump supporters, Republican supporters, conservatives in America refuse to hold the people they voted into office accountable.
Well, y'all, it looks like the shutdown is here. Let's talk about what that means. So as of tonight, Congress has failed to pass a new federal budget, and the White House Office of Management Budget, OMB, that's what you've heard me call it, has ordered all agencies to begin official shutdown procedures. Now, this means unless lawmakers return and agree on a new funding bill before midnight tonight, then the United States government will partially shut down at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So what we're looking at is about maybe 3 hours from now, 2.5, maybe 3 hours from now. So the Senate actually rejected a temporary funding bill, H.R. 5371, earlier this evening. Meanwhile, this is what I was talking about earlier. Meanwhile, House Republicans adjourned. They were like, we out, without reconvening for new votes. Now, the OMB, Office of Management Budget, led by Director Russell Vought, sent a memo instructing agencies to execute their plans for an orderly shutdown. Now, that memo also directed federal employees to report to work only long enough to close out operations and process furloughs or perform their essential duties. So let's talk about who's affected first. Number one, federal employees. Up to 750,000 government workers are going to be furloughed without pay starting Tuesday morning. Okay. So we're looking at, I don't want to say Tuesday morning. I want to say Wednesday morning. So let me back up. Let me recant that. Now, essential employees such as air traffic controllers, TSA officers, Border Patrol, and military personnel, they still have to report for duty without immediate pay until the shutdown ends, okay? Now, air travel and transportation, the FAA will furlough about 11,000 employees, while 13,000 controllers and 50,000 TSA officers are going to continue to work unpaid. You can expect delays in flights, inspections, and certifications. Health and research agencies are also impacted with this shutdown. So the CDC will close about 64% of its staff. The NIH will retain only emergency personnel, okay? Public health surveillance, disease tracking, and research programs are going to be paused during this time. Now, let's talk about those community service programs when I come back. All right, let's talk about those community services. Head Start programs, housing assistance, and some nutrition programs like WIC may actually see temporary interruptions depending on state funding reserves that are set in place. National parks and museums are going to begin closing gates and visitor centers Tuesday morning. Benefits and payments. Okay, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and VA benefits will continue since they are quote unquote mandatory spending. New applications and processing for small business loans, passports, and permits will pause. Did you catch that? Now, let me tell you how this is going to affect everyday life. Okay, so how it affects everyday life. It's going to be some delays. We talked about that. So with passports, small business loans, and new federal grants, those will be delayed. Community impact. Local governments and nonprofits that depend on federal reimbursements, childcare, housing, or food aid programs could face those funding gaps unless, of course, those gaps are already being replaced or there is a space in state funding to cover that gap. Economic strain. So now analysts estimate $400 million in lost wages every day that the shutdown continues. Now that's going to slow local economies where federal employees live and actually spend money. So here's what happened next. The shutdown clock runs out at midnight. Okay, so the House of Representatives is adjourned until October 7th. Y'all heard that right, October 7th, meaning the impasse could last for at least 1 week unless members are called back for an emergency session, okay? Labor unions have already filed lawsuits challenging what they call an illegal RIF firing orders, okay? Essential workers will keep the country running from air traffic safety to healthcare response, but their paychecks will be delayed. So here's what you can do. You can check your federal office status by visiting usa.gov, and then you're going to take a look at the agency shutdown status, okay? If you receive federal pay or benefits, direct deposits, or Social Security, Medicare, that's going to continue. New benefit claims or updates you may find will be delayed, okay? For travelers, allow extra time at the airports. Remain patient during this time. since we're going to experience some travel delays because of TSA not being in position. Okay. Now, what you can do is go to tsa.gov and check for wait time updates, if at all possible.
So the government might shut down unless Congress agrees to a funding plan. Let me break it down for you. So the government might shut down tonight, September 30th at midnight, if they do not come up with a funding plan. So normally every year, October 1 is the new fiscal year in which Congress votes or they approve a budget during that time for the remainder of the year, the entirety of the year. However, the Republicans drafted up a bill and did not include any input of Democrats and said, yeah, here you go, vote on this. Yeah, and the Democrats said, no, we're not doing that. So what's going to happen is the Democrats have chosen to not sign or to not vote on this bill, which may cause a government shutdown. And I know some of you might say, well, I thought the Republicans run the House and the Senate. Yeah, they do. However, they still need at least 7 Democrats to vote on this bill. Now, mind you, this bill or this continuing resolution will only be allocated for 7 weeks. And then they will go back to the negotiation table. So this whole government shutdown is only for, 7 weeks of funding, if they decide to vote and get their 7 Democrats that they need to vote on this bill. And then it's back to the drawing board, again, in the hopes of another government shutdown if they do not agree to terms, right? Now, the Republicans don't want to fund healthcare. They just said, we done with it, we're away with it. We don't want to extend any more help to Medicare, Medicaid, and basically the Democrats are like, we need Affordable Care Act premium subsidies. Now, I know you're probably thinking, what is an Affordable Care Act premium subsidy, right? So a premium subsidy is basically financial assistance to families of a household size and income that do not qualify or would not be able to pay for these healthcare subsidies. So the Democrats want an extension on the Affordable Care Act subsidies, and the Republicans are saying basically, go to hell.
Brothers and sisters, hope you're good wherever you are. Let's talk about something that doesn't just affect Washington politicians or lobbyists. It affects everyday working people. I'm talking about the United States federal government shutdown. Now, you've probably heard about shutdown before. Maybe seen them trending in the news like now, but what do they really mean for regular citizens? That's the story I want us to break down today together. So let's start with the basics. A government shutdown happens when Congress cannot agree on a budget or temporary funding. The US government operates on annual budgets. If lawmakers don't pass one, or at least a short-term extension, the federal government legally runs out of money to keep many of its operations going. Now, here's the catch. Essential services like the military, border patrol, air traffic control, and law enforcement keep running. But non-essential services, which include things like food safety inspections, national parks, research labs, even federal loan offices, stop or get drastically reduced. And here's the painful part. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers are either sent home without pay or forced to work without a paycheck until Congress figures it out. You might be asking, but why would politicians allow this to happen, knowing it hurts the people? Well, shutdowns usually come down to political standoffs. It's when lawmakers use the federal budget as leverage to push their own agendas. One side demands certain policies, the other refuses, and instead of compromising, they let the entire government's funding lapse. Think about that. Everyday people, from TSA workers at the airport to janitors in government buildings, end up paying the price of political games being played at the top. Meanwhile, members of the Congress still collect their paychecks during shutdowns. That's the imbalance right there. Now let's talk about the impact. Federal workers, imagine working for weeks, sometimes months, without knowing when your paycheck will come. Many families live paycheck to paycheck, so a shutdown means choosing between rent, food, or bills. Communities, small businesses near federal offices lose customers because workers are either at home or cutting back on spending. Public services, national parks close, passport applications stall, disaster relief gets delayed. food programs for children and low-income families face funding gaps. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. These shutdowns have very real consequences on the ground, hitting working-class families hardest. Now let's zoom out. Shutdowns highlight something deep about America. The divide between political elites who play games with the power and the ordinary people who bear the consequences. Every shutdown reminds us that system is fragile when it's supposed to be built to serve people. It's also a reminder that working class people, regardless of race, background, or political party, often share some struggles when government support is pulled away. The TSA worker in New York, the park ranger in Colorado, and the single parent relying on food programs in Alabama all feel the pinch. The government shutdown isn't just a political headline. It's a window into how decisions at the top ripple down into daily lives of people who had no say in the fight. And the lesson here, we need to stay informed, question the priorities of those in power, and most importantly, stand together as communities when time gets hard. Because at the end of the day, whether it's shutdowns, economic downturns, or political debates, the burden always falls on the people. And if the people don't speak up, the cycle will keep repeating. Now, brothers and sisters, stay aware, stay strong, and keep looking out for each other. Thanks for watching, and kindly subscribe, comment, like, and share this video. See you in the next episode. Goodbye.